What's up, guys? This is Coach Amir from SlimFigureBody.com. In the last 16 years, I've helped transform over 1,200 successful entrepreneurs. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the prophet. If you haven't heard about Gary Brecka, you should know that he's actually not the prophet. If you're religious, you should know that there's, you already know there's Almighty God. And then above that is Gary Brecka. And here's why. So this guy is like a walking contradiction, and everything that is wrong with this industry is presented in one person. I could probably make 100 videos just debunking stupid, moronic, utterly, just like the most idiotic thing you've ever heard. This is dumber. Like, he comes up with dumber things. But to not make this video 10 hours long, we're going to talk about 5 main things that I found with a quick search of, even though there could be 500. So let's go right into it. So number 1, if you're religious, you probably believe that the God knows when you're going to die. Or he may not know. Who knows? Like, maybe he knows because he's almighty, all-knowing. But maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't. Gary Brecka, though, does know when you're going to die. So every time he speaks anywhere, he knows exactly when you're going to die. This is, you would think anybody with the brain would laugh at this. People actually don't. They're like, he actually knows when I'm going to die. So Dana White, the UFC president, comes up and Gary Brecka says, I'm not God. I'm above that. And I know when you're going to die, exactly to the minute, to the day, like exactly when you're going to die. One thing that comes to my mind when I hear that is Charlie Munger always says, I wish I'd know where I'm going to die, so I never go there. That's the first association I get with stupidity like this, that he knows when you're going to die. So if you ask yourself, how can somebody come up with something this stupid? It's genuinely hard. Like if somebody put a gun to my face and said, hey, you need to come up with the stupidest thing the world has ever seen, I would not come up with, I know when somebody's going to die. That's too dumb. That's contrary to everything we know about science, logic, pretty much everything. Like, he just knows. By the way, how did he come up with this? Well, he comes from, apparently, from the insurance. So he used to sell insurance. So he's a very, very good salesman. By the way, sales is a phenomenal, most important foundational skill that we need to have as entrepreneurs. But Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach says, selling is the process of getting somebody intellectually and financially invested in a future outcome that's good for them. That's what Dan Sullivan says. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Best definition, I've yet to find better one. Something that is good for them. Gary Brecka is selling bullshit that is not only not true, it's a lie, but it's also not good for them. Because if you believe that a man out there, anybody, knows when you're going to die, I mean, then I guess you deserve to be scammed. You should buy his supplements, gene test, $130,000, superhuman protocol bundle bullshit. Like, you deserve that. Like, if you genuinely think that somebody can predict when you're going to die, to the day, to the minute, he knows. So now insurance is probably selling health insurance or life insurance, whatever, I don't know. But if he tells you he knows when you're going to die, and then you just buy insurance and your family is cared for, great way to sell it. I would say less than ethical, if you ask me. But again, taking that into health industry and telling people you know when you're going to die, like, are you kidding me? Anyways, going to number 2.
Fibromyalgia, like chronic fatigue syndrome and like so many other syndromes, is not a diagnosis. Fibromyalgia doesn't exist. Fibromyalgia are trigger points all throughout the body that cause pain, right? And they say that when you have this soreness and this achiness, you have this condition, fibromyalgia, right? It's like irritable bowel syndrome. It's just a bunch of words that they put together and say that's your diagnosis. But it's not a diagnosis, it's just a bunch of stuff in the same category. So fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome come from the same place, right? They come from a lack of the most important nutrient in the human body, vitamin D3.
So fibromyalgia, IBS, and chronic fatigue syndrome are not real things. They're not real. They're just made up things that some actual doctors with actual science degrees who know actual science, which he knows or does none of this, they actually said, here's what we know about fibromyalgia. It's a disorder of this and this and this. Here's the medical procedure, the medication, things that we do to actually make that less bad, right? To help people with fibromyalgia, IBS, chronic fatigue syndrome, we can actually have something that is going to help them because science has evolved enough that we can do that. Guess what? None of that is true, and you don't need any of that. What you need is vitamin D. That solves everything. There's just one thing that you need, vitamin D. It fixes all the diseases, nobody needs to be sick in this world anymore, because Gary Brecka, above God, knows that you just need vitamin D. By the way, vitamin D is a very important vitamin. It controls the expression of over 1,000 genes. It's actually a hormone. Everybody's pretty much deficient in it. So, is it true that it's very likely, not guaranteed, you need to do the blood test, see what your vitamin D level is, and then supplement based on that? But very likely you are. Studies have shown that over 90% of people are deficient. You very likely are. And is it true that some people who have fibromyalgia probably have low vitamin D? Yes, because 90% of all people are deficient in vitamin D. So that's literally like saying 80%, that's, mistaking causation and correlation. They're not the same thing, Gary, which he's yet to learn. It's like saying, okay, 80% of people are overweight, and most people eat meat. Therefore, meat is causing people to be overweight, which, by the way, it's not. Overeating is, right? Because people overeat fats and carbs and undereat protein, as a general rule for all population in the modern world. Okay, so it's also like saying 80% of people are overweight and 80% of people drink water. Therefore, water that has no calories is the reason everybody's fat, which it's not, right? It's just basically completely wrong, or reasoning that has nothing to do with reality, but welcome to Gary Brecka's show, okay? Going to number 3.
370 million lives, I could boil it down to a single sentence. And this sentence may be the most profound single sentence you ever hear in your lifetime in terms of its impact on how long you will be on this planet and how many healthy years you will be on this planet. It will have a greater impact on when disease begins and how quickly it progresses in your body. It will have a greater impact on your longevity, your mortality, your health, your fitness, your waking energy, your cognitive function, the depth of your delta waves of sleep, your libido, or your response to exercise. It's this: the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease.
Most important sentence you'll ever hear is you need oxygen. This is like, it's really hard here to say, like, this is the dumbest thing you've ever heard, because this is literally like saying, hey, here's the most important sentence you'll ever hear in your life about your health. You're like, what is it? What is it? Gary Brecka, please tell us. You are not a prophet. You're above God. So please save us, Gary. It's like, here's one for you by Amir. You need a heart, working heart, in order to live. If your heart stops, you die. Oh my God. I know you've never heard that. Am I the prophet now? You can also say you need working lungs to live. You need blood to live. If your blood, let's say you get injured or cut or something, and enough of your blood, certain percentage of your blood, you bleed out, you die. So if you don't have enough blood, you die. It's literally like saying you need oxygen to live. Of course you do. If you don't breathe in, right, and suffocate, then you die. Oh my God. That is the most important thing we'll ever hear about health. Oh my God. Moving on. 4, magic water. I talked about water, right? If you don't have water for 4 days, you die. So we can easily say the most important thing you'll ever hear. By the way, everybody's generally dehydrated because they don't drink enough water. So here's the most important thing you'll ever hear in your health in your entire life. What is it? You need more water, which is true, by the way. But is that like the most important, the earth-shattering truth that you've never heard before? You need to drink more water. You probably do, yes, but it's like, oh my God. Anyways, going with the water, 4th thing, the magic water. So check this out.
Inside this stick is something called mother water. What it'll do in about 30 seconds is it will restructure the water. Remember, water doesn't just have chemical properties, it's got physical properties. If you've ever seen any of the research on praying over water, or actually speaking to water, or playing music to water, not only more hydrating, it actually changes the charge and makes the water more viable. So this will restructure and make the water what we call coherent.
So after watching this, you can conclude that literally only a person with IQ of 3 would probably fall for this. No, like people are watching this, they're following this guy. Like magic water, it's going to change chemicals. It's going to do better. This water's better than the regular water. It's like, oh my God. Okay, moving on, guys. 5th thing, this is very, very, very near and dear to my heart.
When you don't have any sugar in your bloodstream, you get to the gym, you have a 20-minute reserve of glycogen. 20 minutes into your workout, you're out of energy. Your body needs energy now. It takes 3 minutes to liquefy lean muscle. It takes 5 hours to turn fat into energy. Where do you think your body's getting energy? So what happens is you're going hammer down on the treadmill, you are actually digesting your own lean muscle.
Let's talk about this. Glycogen. You burn through glycogen in 20 minutes, according to Gary Brecka. Guys, when you eat carbs, they convert into something called glycogen that's stored in your muscles. If you have more muscle, you can store more. If you have less muscle, you can store less. Generally speaking, around 400 to 500 grams of glycogen is stored in a human body. That is 1,600 to 2,000 calories. If you are a larger person, you can store more, because if you have more muscle, you store more, right? But the difference is not that huge, okay? Still, 1,600 to 2,000 calories just in your muscles. You burn that in 20 minutes, according to Gary Brecka. Guys, let me put it this way. So I was a professional triathlete, 3-time national champion, pro athlete, and Olympic Games candidate. I was a 200-pound pro triathlete. And as a large, physically large individual, because everybody that I was competing against was like 150, 160 pounds, I weighed 40 to 50 pounds more than they did. So if I 200 pounds, then now I'm 220, because, I retired and, started lifting, built more muscle, yada, yada. But back then, more muscle just doesn't really do much, right? It just makes you bigger, meaning heavier and slower. So I was 200 pounds. And if I am going at the same pace in running or cycling with the guy who's 150 pounds, I have to exert more energy, right? Because if a SUV and a Prius, they don't have the same gas mileage. A bigger car needs more energy, meaning more gas to go, right? So I burn more calories than a 150-pound guy does if I weigh 200 pounds. Therefore, back then, when I was a pro triathlete, I was burning like 800, 900 calories per hour of racing, which means all-out effort, like maximum effort, highly trained, like professional athlete, 200 pounds, decent amount of muscle, even then, 800 to 900 calories. This is very, very, very rare. Most people cannot burn anywhere close to that when doing cardio, regardless of what these watches say, what somebody says, burn 1,000 calories in a kickboxing class, not even close. Most people don't even burn half of that in an hour. And that's for cardio. Cardio burns more calories per minute than lifting weights does, simply because it's a continuous activity. You don't usually run for 5 minutes and then stop. You just run. For lifting, you lift weights and then stop, right? So you lift weights for 30, 40, 50 seconds, however long your one set lasts, and then you rest. So, and by the way, this is assuming that all the calories that you burn come from glycogen, which they don't. As the higher intensity you do, the higher percentage of the energy you burn comes from carbs, or that glycogen, and lower percentage comes from fats. As you lower the intensity, for example, when you walk or slowly jog, almost all the calories you burn come from fats in your body, not the carbs. So in short, who burns 1,500 to 2,000 calories in 20 minutes? That person does not exist. It's physiologically impossible. If Gary Brecka knew the basics, which he doesn't, of physiology, he would know that. But of course he doesn't, so he can't understand any of it. Next, you liquefy muscle or lose muscle mass in 3 minutes of exercise. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You burn and lose muscle in 3 minutes of exercise? So if somebody runs a marathon, how do they have any muscle left? If you're working out for an hour in the gym, how do we not all lose muscle and immediately die? How do we have any muscle left? How? If we lose muscle after 3 minutes? What? This is the dumbest thing, one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in all of exercise science or anything to do with exercise. You start to lose muscle after 3 minutes. The only scenarios in which you lose muscle are if you are fasting for more than 20 hours, 24 hours of not eating, the protein balance, which is the outcome of protein breakdown and protein buildup. This is always happening in your body. Both processes, usually they are in balance and you don't lose or gain any muscle. If you are to gain any muscle, your protein balance has to be positive. If you have protein breakdown being higher than the protein buildup, then you lose muscle. This happens only when somebody is genuinely starving, like you don't eat for days, or in this case, we know scientifically that 20 to 24 hours of fasting, you start to go into that negative, right? That's when you lose muscle, 20 to 24 hours of not eating anything, Or if you are, for example, trained and you have a good amount of muscle and now you got injured and you're not training at all. So you're detraining. This can be done with purpose, right? Let's say somebody's too heavy and they need to lose 10 pounds because they have a weight class in a certain sport and they're like, what can I do? I'm going to lose 10 pounds of muscle. They intentionally undereat protein and don't train to lose the muscle. These are the only scenarios in which you actually lose muscle. Or of course, some kind of actual diseases, yes. But that is very rare and really not relevant to most of us. So how do you lose muscle in 3 minutes? Gary Brecka, just fuck you. Like seriously, just come on. Okay, one last thing. He says, it takes 5 hours to break down fats. It's like, really? Okay, so 5 hours to break down fats? And by the way, that's his support for why you start burning muscle in 3 minutes. Like, what? So if I start walking right now, guess what my body is using for energy to walk? Guess what my body is using for energy right now, this moment when I'm sitting? It's using fats for energy. Whether these fats come from the food I eat, or if I haven't eaten, let's say they're coming from if I haven't eaten for quite a many hours, then my body is using fats from my stored fat in order to feed me, to keep me alive. So does it take 5 hours? No, it doesn't take 5 hours, Gary Brecka. Fuck you. Like you have no clue what you're talking about. You're utterly clueless about basics of physiology. You should not be talking about something you don't know about, which just means you shouldn't be in this industry at all. Like you should go sell insurance. Apparently that's what you're really good at. Guys, bottom line here about Gary Brecka, this is one of the biggest charlatans that exists today in the industry. And his bottom line is he loves the MTHFR gene. So this is a gene that everybody has, and there's a certain mutation of that gene that, like 40-something% of the population could have, which has to do with, B vitamin and producing serotonin, which is the, serotonin which you've heard is like makes you happy. So it can affect your mood, it can affect, your appetite, your behavior, and is related to ADHD, these like mental disorders. So a lot of people love to be told there's something bad with them, something's wrong with them, and therefore like, oh, you must have the gene. It's like, oh, by the way, vast majority of these 40% of the population that have this gene mutation have no symptoms whatsoever. They don't even know, nor does it matter to them because they have no symptoms whatsoever. Does a certain percentage of people who have this gene mutation have maybe higher propensity for ADHD or some kind of behavioral or disorders or mental health issues? Yeah, but does that mean that everybody should take the test, the $600 test, which you can get in other places for the fraction of that price if you really want to? And by the way, if that is the case, you just take the folate supplement. Yeah, methylated one is better. Take the supplement, there you go. Guess what? He has the supplement that costs 20 times more than that actual same supplement in all the other places. So basically, Snake Oil Salesman 101. This is probably not the last video. I can make probably 100 more videos of this charlatan. Guys, remember, this industry is 99.999% utter bullshit. And Gary Brecka is literally above God, the prophet. He's not a prophet, he's above God. So he knows everything. And actually, he knows absolutely nothing, not even the basics of physiology. And I don't even know what to say other than, fuck you, Gary Brecka.